Good morning, Big Square. Roadroo.com with your morning horn of Z's, your sip of coffee. Let's talk Deutsche Bank. I got asked yesterday in the live chat about Deutsche Bank. I'm like, I haven't heard much, and voila. Here we have Deutsche Bank plans about half of the 18,000 job cuts in Germany. So Deutsche Bank's obviously bleeding money. And what do? They chop off as many jobs as they can, which hurts their future revenue, but it's a survival technique. They're going to try to go all digital, blah, 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 right? We've heard this story before. Here's the problem. Germany's employment situation, it's a completely socialist situation. They don't let you fire 18,000 people. They just don't let you. You need government approval to do that. So his grand plan to save the company by firing, I think there's 45,000 or so that work there. They're going to chop 18,000 in Germany. Something like that. Let's see. Let's listen to a guy on the ground, actually. This is a good discussion. They're talking to a guy in Germany who analyzes the banks and says, is this even possible? Check this out.
It is an extraordinary announcement. Our Stephen Aaron's in Frankfurt right now on Deutsche Bank, looking at adjusting their retail and their domestic banking within Germany. Steve, the theme here, as we saw with HSBC yesterday, and as Michael Mayo of Wells Fargo stated on the U.S. banks, is the end of traditional retail banking. Is that feasible in Germany? Is digital banking so successful that Deutsche Bank can bring down the retail platform?
I think you're raising exactly the right question. We've seen in the past how difficult it is to cut jobs in Germany, and Deutsche Bank wants to cut about half of the 18,000 jobs it wants to get rid of over the next few years. It wants to cut about half of that in Germany. I mean, how is that going to be possible? I personally think that's going to be extremely difficult to pull off for the CEO, but I guess that's his plan.
Okay, why do you say that? That's critical, Steve. With your on-the-ground knowledge of Germany, why will this be hard for Mr. Saving?
Because if you look at the past, not just Deutsche Bank's track record in cutting jobs in Germany, but all banks in Germany, they have an extremely hard time to do it. It costs a lot of money. You need agreement by the works councils, and they're likely to sabotage it. I mean, they're in negotiations over a bit of a pay raise with the unions right now, and they're doing everything they can to sabotage a deal. Even though profitability of the banks is just, I mean, it's a joke, right? And so I think it's going to be really hard to get those stakeholders on board and get the deal done.
Steve, how many job losses will we see in London? Have a lot of the jobs already moved because of Brexit preparations?
Those jobs, I don't think, have moved yet, and we will see very significant cuts there. If you look at the general job cuts target, 18,000, that's about a fifth of the workforce. And so London being disproportionately hit means there's going to be a reduction in excess of 20%, really, relating also to the Brexit. And we just heard how much of a hard Brexit scenario we're facing right now.
So I've been jumping up and down about Germany for a long time. About Deutsche Bank for I can't even tell you how long. The reason was they were the largest derivative holder, and they turned into the weakest bank. They're still the weakest bank, but they're not the largest derivative holder anymore, believe it or not. Yes, they have over 40 trillion in derivatives, and yes, it would implode the entire system, but there's a bigger problem now, and it's a bank that has it's a criminal RICO. JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the world, is a criminally run operation. Everybody's been screaming it for 20 years. In the gold and silver markets, in all markets, they are a criminal organization. Here's the latest. UK court allows Nigeria's $875 million case against JP Morgan to proceed. This was a situation where the government was trying to transfer $875 million in an oil deal, and JP Morgan basically stole it. Insane what these people get away with. Now let's talk about Jamie Dimon's expertise. Jamie Dimon and the guy from WeWorks were in bed together. Jamie Dimon all of a sudden said, oh, these IPOs, we're going to get in the middle of this. We're going to be the underwriter. We're going to invest billions of dollars in it. which they did, and now that whole situation's falling apart. They cannot catch a break, our friends over at JP Morgan, and they don't deserve a break. They don't deserve a break. WeWork's bankers, investors scramble to salvage collapsing company. Wall Street investment bankers, including JP Morgan Chase, are scrambling to determine if WeWork, the troubled office sharing outfit, can be salvaged after its plan to become a public company cratered, raising questions about long-term viability. This was a fraudulent company. This was complete fraud, and JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon specifically was right in the middle of it. Another huge criminal conspiracy that Jamie Dimon was right in the middle of. How about Bernie Madoff? Who was Bernie Madoff's only banker? JP Morgan Chase. And it's not a hands-off situation. You cannot transfer $50, $60 billion in a complete Ponzi scheme with a bank, and you're only single bank, and they only had one banker on the deal. That is fraud. But our government doesn't hold people to that standard. This is insane what's going on, and this is the end game. And the end game is going to get really beyond ugly. So Jamie Dimon and all his great IPO ideas are failing. Here's the latest one to fail. Just one day after a short seller slammed Smile Direct Club, all 10 banks on its IPO rated a buy. So this Smile Direct Club was another IPO fraud that Jamie Dimon was pushing and JP Morgan, and it got destroyed by basically news that it is a fraud, and voila, what happens? Jamie Dimon comes in his group, JP Morgan, come out with a huge buy signal. Just one business day after a short seller slammed teeth straightening startup Smile Direct Club, alleging that it has cut corners and put customers at risk, the banks that led its September IPO have published notes on the company, with all 10 rating it an equivalent buy. JP Morgan initiated coverage of Nashville, Tennessee Smile Direct with overnight rating at a share price of $31, or more than double the stock price. How is that not complete fraud? Complete fraud. Welcome to America. This is not capitalism. This is bankers taking over our world, and you know what it's going to get us? This is what it's going to get us. Elizabeth Warren as president. Don't believe me? What happens if the bankers crash and demand a bailout? Who's going to be the front runner? Who's going to get blamed? Capitalism will be blamed. The rich will be blamed. Donald Trump will be blamed. Who will the country turn to? Who's been fighting the banks nonstop? Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is correct about the banks. They are fraud. They are criminal. They belong in jail. She's not correct about the solution. The solution is not socialism. The solution is free market capitalism. But a true capitalism, not where Jamie Dimon could get away with murder. True capitalism. Elizabeth Warren writes a letter to all the CEOs demanding that they follow on to her agenda. In August, the Knights of the Business Roundtable announced that they are putting stakeholders ahead of shareholders at their primary business purpose. Now, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's raising in the presidential polls, is demanding that these CEOs prove that they mean it by endorsing her grand design to remake American capitalism. Quote, I write for information about the tangible actions you intend to take to implement the principles in the roundtable statement on purpose of a corporation. Senator Warren wrote to Jamie Dimon and other CEOs last week. Her letter denounces corporate profits, stock buybacks, dividends, and she says leaves workers behind. I am pleased that the Business Roundtable has acknowledged the harm that this trend inflicts on the economy and that you, on behalf of JP Morgan Chase, have pledged to take steps to reverse it. Again, this is kind of like the China MBA thing. It's the virtue signaling, but are they really going to mess with the profits? So Elizabeth Warren writes all these CEOs a letter. And of course, it's all about, no, it's about the people. You shouldn't put profits in front of anything, blah, blah, blah. Here's a really good discussion long time ago from 1978, Milton Friedman on the morality of free markets. Check this out.
Don't attribute to me your conventional views of what
He's at Cornell University.
I'm not a conservative. I'm a believer in freedom.
Well, then I'd like to talk about that using an example. Freedom. In Ohio, an old man failed to pay his electric bill. You may be familiar with the case.
Now, this guy is a classic liberal student. He confuses freedom with some old guy who dies. Check this out. Let me play that again from where he goes.
It's because I'm not a conservative. I'm a believer in freedom.
Well, then I'd like to talk about that using an example. Freedom. In Ohio, an old man failed to pay his electric bill. You may be familiar with the case. And the electric company turned off the electricity and he died. The reason they turned it off was because it wouldn't have been profitable for them to keep it on because he didn't pay his bill. Do you believe that was right?
I don't know the details of that case at all, but I can well believe, but I'll be glad to, no, excuse me. In many of these cases, you hear stories which, when you find the details, are very different from those that are presented. But let's suppose it were true, which is what I was going to go on to say. Why do you want to stop me? Why do you assume I'm always going to give the wrong answer? Let's assume the facts were true. The result is tragic. Who is responsible? Is it really the responsibility? Should I blame the people? Let's suppose that for a moment, the electric were to follow the practice of never turning off anybody's electricity. Let's just for a moment take that other extreme. Then this wouldn't have happened. Who would pay the cost?
Are those the only two alternatives?
Well, for a moment, we can come to other alternatives, but I just want to show you the logic of it. Because I want to show you
absurdity.
No, it's not an absurdity, because I want to show you that what you have to ask about are the costs imposed on different individuals. The electric company is meaningless. The electric company is a non-human institution. The electric company, what you must talk about are either the stockholders of the electric company, the employees of the electric company, or the customers. Those are the people involved. Now, if you go to the other extreme and adopt a policy that the electric company will never turn anything off, then you effectively institute a system under which the only people who will pay for electricity will be those who pay for it voluntarily. Now, the number of people who will do that...
Are those the only two alternatives?
No, but I'm just showing you. I want to go. You've gone to one extreme. I'm going to the other extreme and show you that where the responsibility really lies for the kind of thing you're describing. The responsibility really lies not on the electric company for turning it off, but on those of this man's neighbors and friends and associates who are not charitable enough to enable him as an individual to meet the electric bill. You're blaming the wrong person for what happened.
Okay, well, I think people understand that example.
Capitalism works. It works if it's implemented properly. If it's implemented properly, when someone breaks the law, they go to jail. That's what's not happening now. Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan and the big banks have broken so many laws you can't even count it, and nobody goes to jail because they control and own our politicians and the regulators, especially the regulators. This whole thing about Veritasium right now has nothing to do with Reggie Middleton and how the ICO went off before the SEC even ruled on ICOs. It's got to do with what Veritasium could do to their criminal system. Peer-to-peer capital asset exchange. There is no need for a criminal banker doing suspect IPOs. Think about it. Why do you think the SEC went absolutely nuclear and crazy on Veritasium? It's because Veritasium could replace something that is absolutely required for the old system to keep going. That's fraudulent activity, criminal interactions, criminal capital market. And voila, someone invented the cure, and what do? They go after him and the token and the software and the platform and everything about it. Now, does that mean Veritasium is done? I don't think so. But I don't think it'll be resurrected until after the old system crashes and is shown for the fraud that it is, which I think is coming this year. So that's my take this morning. Repos tomorrow, they're going to do another big one because one expires. The first 30 billion expires, so they're going to have to do more than 30 billion tomorrow. I will report on that, and I'll keep you guys informed. This is Big Weir from roadtoruta.com. Give me a like and subscribe, and follow the work at Road to Ruta. I'm trying to give you the inside scoop on what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously, the world is not right, and things are breaking down on the financial side. It's going to be a lot like 2008, except times 20. So hang on tight.